Welcome back to the Secret Underground Lair. Today we are going to work on assembling the whole structure of the table. So that will be our four legs and all of our cross pieces, front and back, side to side. So I have most of them laid out here. Well, some of them, the 1.5 pieces laid out on the table saw here. So we'll run them through the saw, get them cut down to final dimension, and then work on the joinery and assemble it all. So we're going to be using mortise and tenon joints on these, all these pieces. And I'm thinking at the moment to use a pinned tenon, which means that the tenon will go into the mortise joint on the leg here, for example, and we'll use a small dowel to go through to hold that pin in place. It'll be glued as well, but the goal here is to do it without any metal fasteners, no screws. So that's what we're going to try to do. That's today's adventure. So during the glue up, what happened, and as can happen with a large number of pieces being glued up at the time, is that the pieces shifted just a little bit. So I'm off by this piece here, although it's nice and tight down at this end, shifted about 1/16 of an inch about here. Not quite a perfect join there. I knew that going into the glue up, which is why the pieces were built oversized. But what I'm going to be doing to fix this and get us a straight side again is use the bed rail technique. Get a straight side on each of these pieces that were glued up, and then we can cut them down to exactly the final size. So a bit of I'll call it controlled chaos or planned chaos during the glue up, with the intent that we can correct it using bed rail and the joinery technique on the table saw. So I'll slip you on to fast forward again while I go through all of the pieces that were glued up to get a straight edge, and then we'll cut them down to final size. So we have a good straight side on all of our pieces now. Now we can focus on getting them down to the 1.5 by 1.5 dimension that I want. The legs are going to be 2.5 by 1.5, but all of these pieces will get to 1.5 by 1.5. Oh, and by the way, when you see me, don't know if it showed up very well in the time lapse there, but when I'm shuffling all of the sawdust into the hole here to get sucked down by my shop vac, or the dust collector, that's just me being obsessive compulsive. Nothing magic, just me being a little obsessive. Okay, I'll set the fence up to be the 1.5 by 1.5. These pieces originally I thought I might be making these into legs, but we found different leg pieces, so these are going to cut down to 1.5 by 1.5. So I'll get the fence set up for that, and away we go. I'm going to examine every piece, by the way, just to see if there's, for example, when I'm cutting off these guys, where they're joined together, there's a piece here and a piece here. I don't want to just take the bulk of the material off to one side. I do want to kind of take each side evenly. So if there is a seam, it shows up in the middle of the piece and it wouldn't look a little odd. But I'll start by getting everything kind of widthwise, let's call it, to 1.5. Then we'll come back and we'll make 2 passes to get these sides the way we want them. I held off on doing this piece because I realized I have an opportunity to get rid of this knot and this knot. So I'm going to run it through the saw just to kind of trim up this edge, get this edge nice and flush, a straight edge, and then I'll take 1.5 inches off here, and that should just eliminate that knot and completely eliminate that. So we'll wind up with a better, clear piece here. So we now have all of our support pieces cut to 1.5 by 1.5, good and square. Happy with those. Now I'm going to take the legs and get them to their final dimension. All right, I've had to pick a side of which one I want to cut off. I'm just going to pass this through the table saw on one side. I don't need to worry about making them even on both. So it is a 2-pass operation because this is kind of thick, so one through this way, flip it over and go through that way. So I'll do that for all 4 pieces, and then we'll worry about cutting them to the 2.5 inch dimension this way. Okay, the next bit of cutting is going to get these to our 2.5 inch width. So I'll just kind of get the saw set up for that and make these last 4 cuts. Okay, we're just going to make a couple passes on this surface planer. Get rid of some of the scorch marks and a little bit of the unevenness. There's just a tiny little bit where this is cutting through the blade this way, and then flip it over, cut it over this way. There's a little bit of a ridge on some of the pieces where the blade met. So we'll take care of that with the surface planer. Okay, we got all our pieces now, what's called dressed four sides. So ready to cut the legs now to length and start setting up for some mortise and tenon joinery. So let me put this away. Let me pop in for a bite of lunch and come back and we'll deal with that in a minute. So with our leg pieces all cleaned up, you can see all the scorch marks are gone. And I did put a little bit of filler into some of the other holes that were on the board. There were some nail holes in here, so we got them covered up. I'm now going to cut them off here, get a good square edge on this end, and then we'll cut 34 inches to get rid of some of the, for example, on this piece, we'll cut it off about here, so it gets rid of that. We'll do the same with the other pieces, make sure we have the cleanest possible portions of this wood for each of the legs. Once I have that done, I'm going to mark them for tenons, or the mortise joints rather. You may have noticed using a little square here and a knife, just going along the edge. What I was doing is just scoring this edge here because this wood seemed to do a lot of chip out. On the first piece that I was cut, I'm getting chip out way back, good almost ½ inch into the cut. So by using the knife, I can just clean off that edge, or make a little score on that edge, and then it only chips out to the score mark. So it really minimizes it. Okay, I'm going to line all these pieces up and make one cut to get them all exactly the same length. All right, that's got us lined up. We're going to eliminate a big knot here, a little bit of tear out that happened up here, and another knot here. So we're going to wind up with some decent wood for all of the legs. Pleased with that. There are the legs cut to size. So now I'm going to mark out what we want to do for a tenon. mortise and tenon. So I get all these pieces marked the same way. I've lined them all up. And I'm just going to use the square and draw these lines across every piece. And from the bottom, we're going to come up 4 inches to the bottom of the cross brace here. So now we have all the legs marked exactly the same spot, so that we shouldn't have any issues associated with measuring in the wrong place. So if we call these two guys a pair, and these two guys a pair, what I'll be wanting to do is putting the tenon, or the mortise rather, in here. It'll be 1 inch by 1/2 inch. So I want that tenon to be 1/4 of an inch from each of these lines. Let me get that marked as well. Now, the tricky bit with this leg, or with these legs, is we are going to have a tenon, or sorry, a cross brace that runs from here to here. So that means that we need to have a mortise cut into the inside edge here and a mortise into the inside edge here. But we're also going to have a long piece going from here to the other pair of legs, which means we're going to have a mortise on this face about there and a mortise on this face about here. So now it starts to become a little bit more important in terms of which leg is where, because once these are cut, the legs stop being interchangeable. I can swap, corner for corner, but I can't swap anyone to anyone. So it's important to start paying attention to that kind of detail here. So while I've got these, I'm going to mark, these tenons are going to go in exactly the same spot here. Between the same lines as I have the tenons on the side, on this edge. They'll be the same as on this edge. But I'm just going to now mark these guys out where I want them. And these guys should be, if it's a 1.5 inch here, I want and it's a 1/2 inch there. I want this to be in 1/2 inch. Then that's a 1/2 inch tenon, and then the edge of the cross piece is going to be about there. So 1/2 inch in. So I'm going to measure those guys up too, from here and here, and I'm going to do the same thing on these guys. It's also important to make sure that you have a common reference edge. So in this case, common reference edge is going to be this face here. So I want to be going back a 1/2 inch from this face here, and I want to be going back a 1/2 inch from this face to here. If I went back a 1/2 inch from this face, then there's a danger that this piece would be tilted a bit like that. It would be, it would be out of balance, out of alignment, simply because the wood is not exactly 1.5 inches thick. So that 1/16 of an inch would make a gross visible error. So keeping orientation is important. I know there's marking gauges that would make this a little bit easier, but I don't have one. So I have to kind of do it the old-fashioned way. All right, everything is all marked up. And I've also taken the liberty to mark these legs as A1, A2, so that I know that these are a pair. B1, B2, these are a pair. Ready to go to the drill press. I'll get the mortise cutting jig set up. Bring you back when I'm ready to do that. All right, I have the mortising jig set up on the drill press. I just thought I'd take a minute to show you how this thing works. Fundamentally, what we've got is a square chisel bit, a fence, guides to hold the piece into the fence, another piece here to hold the piece down onto the table so the thing just doesn't move. Now, what I'm trying to do is make sure that I get the fence, first of all, parallel to this blade, this chisel. And secondly, I want to make sure the fence is the right distance away from the piece. So to get the fence parallel and the right distance away from the chisel, put this up against the fence before the fence got tightened down, drop the chisel down, and made sure that I had a good alignment between the chisel and this MDF. Now I have the chisel parallel with the fence. I have the bit coming down a 1/2 inch away from the fence, which is exactly where I want the mortise in this piece to be. So this piece that we're going to cut the mortise in, when clamped in here, is exactly a 1/2 inch away from the fence. And the only line I need to worry about is this edge of the chisel with this line here. And then I can just make probably 3-4 cuts to get over so that this edge of the chisel gets onto this line here. All right, that's a mortising jig. I don't see many people using these anymore. This one that I've got in my drill press is well over 50 years old, probably closer to 70 years old. That's the age of this drill press. I think this drill press was built in 1935. And all the attachments that came with it at that time. So it's lasted a good long time. It's doing well. Okay, let's get on with cutting these mortises. The other thing I didn't note is that I have already set the depth of cut, so I'm going to come down about 1 inch into the piece. I made a line here so that I could set that up. Away we go. Now we're just going to loosen everything. This clamp and these two hold-down brackets. Slide the piece in a little bit. So we're going to take about 1/2 of a hole in this one. I do think that it would be a good idea to pre-drill a hole. So I think on the next one I'm going to do that. Okay, next cut. There we have a square hole. Perfect mortise. So I'm going to do the same thing for, let's see, how many we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 4, I got 16 in total, so another 15 to go. So I'll do those off camera. At least now you know how mortises are cut. I'll be back when I'm all done with the mortising. On that last cut that I made, you saw the piece was in vertical orientation. I forgot to set the depth stop, so I thought, well, I'm going to stop here, and I'll do all of the horizontal orientation cuts first. Then I'll come back, reset the depth stop, and do all the vertical ones. So I'm just going to pre-drill the holes on the other pieces, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, we're back, all set up. I'll put you on time lapse and away we go again. All right, we have all our mortises cut. What I'm going to do now is do a little test tenon. That will be all that I do today, but I just would like to see a test fit of that. So I'm going to cut up a piece that's 1.5 by 1.5, and then we'll make a 1 inch by 1/2 inch tenon and see how that fits in. And there is a tenon fit into the joint. So that's our little test fit. I'm happy that that worked just as well as it did. Piece got a little dirty going back and forth over the table saw. So then we'll have another tenon, same kind of thing going from here on the support going to the leg on the other side. So, not quite as far as I wanted to get it today on the progress of the table, but still good progress, and I'm happy with that. Cutting all these mortises, maybe some of you were screaming at the camera saying, hey, why don't you use Matthias's mortising jig? Yeah, I think it would be faster for sure, but I don't have one. I have an old style mortising jig that works off a drill press, so that's what we're using. One day maybe we'll build some of Matthias's stuff. Anyway, that's it for today, so thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.